I don't have any control over that. I have control over asking questions about it. I have control over staying curious. I have control over trying to come to a compromise. But if a team member comes to me and asks me something, I don't have control over what they ask. I don't have control over whether or not they give me a project. I don't have control over how they act if I ask them a question. I would love for each of you on this call to maybe even do a thought audit today. A thought audit of, okay, where are my thoughts going today? Are they in things, are my thoughts leading to things that I'm fully in control of, partially in control of, or no control? And the thing is, the devil wants to steal and rob and destroy because he knows if he can keep your mind on things that you have no control over, he can keep you from taking action and actually move forward. Imagine if you took those thoughts that you are spending on the things that you have no control over. Why do they do it this way? What if we would have done it that way? Should they have done this? If you can start to learn the ways to release those and make a conscious choice to release it, and then put that energy into the things that you have full control over or partial control over, imagine how much more productive you would be.
Sara Emmerson, welcome to the Churchfront Worship and Tech Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored to be here with you today.
Sara, we've met in person at Philo Conference a couple times and have always talked about having you on, so it's great to have you on today. You're new to our audience, so I really want to give you a chance to just catch them up to speed on who is Sara, what does she do, and what are you up to these days?
Well, thanks so much. I am excited to get to know your audience and get to know you more. My preference would be if I could meet every single one of you listening right now and get to know you, that would be my preference. But since we can't do that, we're just going to have a conversation here today, and hopefully someday I'll get to meet each of you. So just pretend like each one of you that are listening today, we're sitting at a coffee shop and I'm getting to know each other. My name is Sara Emmerson, and I am a lot of different things. I am a mom. I have two kids, a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. My 17-year-old's getting ready to graduate high school, which seems like so crazy. Super crazy. Both my kids play sports, so I am a crazy sports mom. My son plays hockey. I am a crazy hockey mom, and yes, it's all encompassing, so that's fun. And my daughter plays basketball, and that's a lot of fun too. I'm my husband and I have been married for 20 years. We live in Geneva, Illinois, and we have a Bernedoodle. He's a big part of our family too. His name is Gunner, and he brings a lot of silly joy to our family. He was a COVID addition, which I'm sure many of you listening have your own COVID puppy story, but we have ours too. So that's a little bit about just the real everyday life of me, but a good portion of what I do and what I just really feel called to in this season is I'm a coach, and I get to spend the best parts of my day helping people get unstuck in life and business and ministry. And I absolutely love it. I love helping people identify where they are, where they want to be, and the strategies to get there. And helping them find new perspectives and new ways of doing things.
I love it. Thanks for sharing a little bit about your background and who you are, who Sara is. And I want to kind of go back a little bit and just ask you, like, what got you to the coaching season? You know, how did that come about, and how long you've been doing that with folks in the area?
Yeah, I'll go way back. I grew up in the church. My dad was a worship leader, and I grew in a music producer. And so I grew up around the studio. I grew up in worship. I was a worship leader growing up. And then I became a creative producer. And so I worked at different churches. Some of you listening might know some of these churches. I worked at Crossroads Church in California. I've worked at Parkcrest Church in California. I grew up at Knott Avenue Christian Church. Shout out to Knott Avenue. I worked at Willow Creek. I was on the worship team at Saddleback. I worked at Christ Community Church here in Illinois for many, many years. Most recently, I was the creative director at Soul City Church in downtown Chicago for 7 years. And so I have a big history of being in worship, the creative world, overseeing production and communications and all of that. And so did that for many years. I it sounds like I'm like 100 years old, but I'm not. So I worked in all these different places. I loved creativity. I loved the energy of live events, and I loved the people that poured their heart and soul into it. And so for me, um, all of the different experiences that I had the opportunity to be a part of led to me recognizing that what I really loved was the individuals that were carrying these things out. I
Mm,
loved the team, I loved the busyness, but at the end of the day, my passion was helping each of those individuals maximize their gifts and maximize their opportunity to the greatest potential that God had given them. And that's what I was led to do. So, over the last 4 or 5 years, I started my own coaching business and have been full time with that for the last 3 years. And gosh, it has been such a privilege to get to be involved in people's ministries and in their lives in a different way, but in a way that's still very fulfilling and still a part of ministries. And I work with people inside the church and outside the church. I work with people in the US and in 5 different countries. So there's a variety. So I think that's something about me too. I love the new and different.
yeah.
And so, whatever issue comes up, whatever person is in front of me, it's a new adventure. And that feels really exciting to me each day.
I love it, man. It is exciting to hear about that. I mean, the background, your resume is incredible, obviously, but then stepping into where you had clarity on kind of what you enjoyed and what was the kind of linchpin there. How did you discern that season of stepping out of? I mean, this is so a side tangent, real quick from our normal
Yeah.
conversation topics, but what did that you had been like really in ministry for a large portion of your career, and then you're stepping into this kind of consulting coaching role. What did that discernment season look like? How did you make that transition?
Yeah. There are seasons that God, like, I think for me, each season that I knew was coming happened a couple years in advance. So God usually prompts my heart in ways of ideas or other people talking to me about different things. And it usually happens a couple years in advance. And I know something's coming, but I might not know exactly what that's going to look like or exactly how it's going to shape up. And so what it meant was I just kept responding to the little nudges put in front of me each day. And at some point, those little nudges turned into louder calls from Jesus and circumstances to where I was like, okay, I'm going to take a jump and we're going to see how this works. And sometimes it feels like just taking a small step, like you're in a little river and you see the pebble in front of you and you take that small step, and then sometimes it feels like you're jumping off of the Empire States Building with a parachute hoping God's going to open it for you. And my journey included lots of those different steps and jumps. And it was through very incredible mentors and coaches myself that I was led to finally make that shift and recognizing that my ministry isn't just in the four walls of a building.
Yeah.
I get to overtly pastor people every day, whether they know it or not. So the people that I'm pastoring today, I was working with a executive that lives in South Africa that works for Gucci, and I
Wow.
was covert pastoring him, whether he knew it or not. And what was so amazing is to watch God use coaching and watch God use conversation and watch God use his hand to help steer people's lives in positive directions, to help free them from the thoughts and actions that are keeping them stuck. And so when I started to see, oh wait, there's a way to do this on the regular, that I've already been doing in the four walls of a church for many years. And I worked in corporate for a good amount of time and live events too. So I had been doing that on an individual basis for many, many years. But to see the people that God brought into my path and see how they used their love and care to steer me actually spurred me on to want to do that for others as well.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I love the covert pastoring idea. It just kind of makes me grin and chuckle to think about
Yeah.
those coaching calls where you know what's happening and they might not, but the seed is being planted for sure.
It is. Hey, I'll give you a little shout out too, a little fun fact. Some of you on here might have heard of the Slingshot Group. I don't know if you've ever heard of Slingshot Group, but that's my dad's company. And so my dad started Slingshot for, I don't know, for churches and for his friends, really, over 20 years ago. And so there's many people in, my dad's name is Stan Endicott, and he had started that many years ago. And so there's coaching individual coaches that were a big part of my journey, but I got to give a shout out to my dad too. He was a huge part of helping guide me, not just in the last 4 or 5 years, but my whole life. And so I've been around different people like
Hmm.
him, like Nancy Beach is a close mentor and friend, and people like them, and Tim Foote. Tim is now the president of Slingshot. And so things like that, those are the people that on a day when I'm like, everything's hitting the fan today, who do I call? I call dad, I call
Yeah.
Nancy, I call. And so those are the people that really help me discern in those seasons. And so it would be negligent for me not to give them a shout out too.
I remember when you told me that, and my mind just kind of blew. I was like, of course, your dad is the Slingshot, founder of Slingshot. And Slingshot, we've had a couple people, we've had coaches from Slingshot on the show. We've had Tim Foote multiple times. He's spoken at our conference, and so we're big fans and have leaned into that relationship quite a few times from that.
Yeah,
So what a fun fact!
it is a fun fact and
I
one
love
I'm very
that.
proud of. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so my first question for you, Sarah, right now is what are you seeing in your coaching relationships and specifically thinking about your ministry leaders, but maybe externally as well? What are you seeing as one of the biggest areas people get stuck? Like what it currently in the grand scheme of, a ministry career or a role at a church or anything in that in leadership regard, what are some of the key factors that are tripping people up, if you will?
Our thoughts, our accountability, and our boundaries.
Wow. Say more.
Um, your thoughts are the thing that control every action that happens. We don't know how to manage them. In fact, many of you that are listening to this today are so good. If I gave you a to do list or an input list or anything like that, you would knock it out and be able to figure it out. You, for some reason, the drums aren't coming through the mic and you can't figure out what's going on. You'd be able to troubleshoot that. And you can handle those problems day in and day out, but you're not recognizing that there's problems in your mind that you are not troubleshooting. And so each one of us, I don't know if you know this, Luke, or not, but each one of us have 60,000 plus thoughts a day.
Whoa.
Everything from, I mean, even sitting here right now and I'm talking to you, there's a park out in front of me. I see a dog, I see the wind blowing, I see branches out there, there's a slide. There's thoughts that are happening consciously and unconsciously all day long,
Yeah.
whether you want to recognize it or not. And it's like as though we are like an air traffic controller and all these airplanes are going over our head and we aren't recognizing which ones we need to tell to keep flying and which ones we actually want to land. And so we're letting things land and we're taking them as truth. It's natural, but our brain thinks something and then we just naturally take it as truth because we thought it. And obviously, if I thought something, I must be a genius and it must be true. And then I create actions out of those thoughts. And the sucky part, that's probably not like it's not like a bad word, but it's not probably a nice word. But the sucky part
That's
about
fine.
it is that it's creating really negative consequences and actions from me. So I take something as truth. You walk out of a meeting with your pastor and he just asks you for 10 more things because he thinks you're capable of doing it and because they're always going to ask for way more than you can do. And then you think in your mind, he doesn't care about my family. He doesn't care about me having time off. He wants me to work 7 days a week. These are thoughts you're having. And then you start acting out of them. You're starting to act
Mm.
bitter. You're starting to act overworked. You're starting to act frustrated. And at no point did he ever say, I want you to work 7 days a week and I don't care about your family. but these are thoughts that you let land. And so what I do personally with my clients is I help them recognize the power of our thoughts. I help them recognize what thoughts they want to land. And then I help them understand the process of what that looks like to release the ones that we don't want, to release the ones that God doesn't want us to listen to. The devil is literally trying to steal, rob, and destroy, and he's doing it in your mind. And so when we can first recognize that we are in control of our thoughts, and then second, take accountability for them. I can't tell you how many times I think through the last 20 years, and there were meetings that I went into and I cringe now thinking back at them. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have only been able to control my thoughts a little bit more, my actions would have been so different. And I have to take accountability for that. Like, no, not everything is your fault. Of course, there's a lot of horribly hard outside circumstances that are coming at you every single day. But when you can recognize that you have the choice to control your mind through the power of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
obviously, but when you recognize that, and then you can recognize that you can take accountability for that and control your actions, and then create boundaries for safety, not to keep people out, but to help people understand how to interact with you in the most healthy way. That's when I see people start to flourish.
I mean, you probably just hit the nail on the head for what so many of our audience feels in just kind of their working environment, in staff meetings. And a lot of times we have part-time tech people who are, they're the go-to for everything, whether it's
Okay,
network
can I stop you
infrastructure.
really quick?
Oh yeah,
I want
please
to
do.
stop. I actually don't know that there is any part-time tech person that is part-time.
Right.
If you're out there right now and you're an actual part-time tech person and you only work part-time, I want you to know you're a unicorn, because
Yeah.
that usually doesn't happen. Usually part-time tech people are working doubly hard. So if you're
Right.
a part-time tech person, I just want to high five you and tell you I see you. Way to go. We all know you're working more than part-time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's part-time on paper, and then in the hours or the mental energy during the week, it's definitely full-time and above. But how when you say take accountability, because I think the thoughts piece definitely resonates with a lot of people, and it would definitely they'd say, yeah, I've been there. I've, had these kind of thoughts about my leaders, and I have these kind of negative connotations based on my experience. When you say take accountability, what is like a practical next step from that experience, for the leader who's experiencing that or recognizing that they have those thoughts? Then where's like the first place to go for them to kind of experience renewal and healing from that?
Yeah, taking accountability, first and foremost, is just the recognition of, oh, wait, God has given me a sound mind. He's given me the ability to make choices, and He's given me the access to the Holy Spirit to help
Mm,
guide me. And so recognizing that you have the accountability to tap into that most powerful power that's out there, and that He will help you through this, and that it's your choice. Many of us are telling ourselves, they're making me do this. I have to do all of this. They are, they. The reality, and I want to say this in the most loving way I can to, and caring way I can, but many of you out there that are listening are thinking, I have to do this. What I want to tell you is you have the choice to quit anytime you want. You have the choice to quit anytime you want. You don't have to be there. You are not a slave to that place. And I think the first thing we have to do is recognize that, oh, wait, it is my choice to be here. I am choosing to be here. Now, I do recognize that a lot of people are like, well, if I left, it would mean this for my family. If I did this, it would mean this for my reality. I get it. But at the end of the day, you are choosing to be there. That's the first step of accountability. The second step is recognizing that you need help. You are not an unlimited resource. You are limited. You are limited in your energy. You are limited in your ability to oversee people. You are limited in the hours. Each of us were only given 24 hours a day. You aren't special. You don't get 48 and we get 24. Everyone has 24. So starting to go to those fundamental accountability things, and a good portion of the people that I work with, they have forgotten that it's their responsibility to fill themselves up first
Mm,
before they can do anything else. And they think, well, the place that I work at won't let me do that. I'm like, well, if you're working for a church and you go and you tell them that you're empty and you can't keep doing this on empty, and they tell you that you still have to do it on empty, my recommend to you would be that that probably isn't a culture you want to be a part of.
mm,
That sounds more like a cult, not a church.
right.
My guess is any person that loves Jesus would look at you and say, "Gosh, you're empty. How can I help?"
Yeah.
Right? And so taking accountability, only you know what your needs are. Only you know what you need. It's your responsibility to identify what those needs are and then to go get them met.
Yeah.
If you need time off, it's your responsibility to go and tell somebody. If you need more help, it's your responsibility to say, I need help. If you need um, more equipment, it's your responsibility to say, we can't do this. Many of the people that I'm working with right now have to learn how to kindly and confidently say no.
Mm.
How do I kindly and confidently say no? Those are all aspects to us taking accountability. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and just to speak to that, I one of the testaments to my story too is that I was on staff at a church, and I love this church. This is our home church, and I was the tech director, and I had come out of a season of poor ministry leadership coming into this role,
Mm.
and just a bad experience on my end. And I remember being in an Easter planning meeting and feeling just a neglect of emotion, and I felt pretty numb to kind of all the conversations around the Easter services and weekends, and thinking I'm not like
Which is the basis of our faith.
right. And I'm yeah, and I was sitting there in the meeting thinking I don't care about any of this at all. And I don't know why, because I'd been a worship leader for almost a decade, and I had, that was kind of my bread and butter. Was like I get excited about those
Yeah.
services, and those are, really pillars of our faith. And just sitting in that meeting, and I'm thinking I don't know why I'm feeling this, but I don't want to feel this way, or like not have emotional attachment to this vision. So I went to my boss and I said, I got to be honest with you. I'm just not excited about this. And I don't really know why. And I'm kind of concerned. Like I'm kind of worried for why I'm detached from the conversations that are happening in the room, spiritually, emotionally. And she looked at me and she said, "What do you need? Like, how do we help?" And so, and then it ended up, I went to counseling for a little bit and kind of talked through some of that stuff. And, but just to reemphasize, like, the personal ownership is a huge piece of that. And you never know what can come from that fruit wise unless you are forthcoming with that need. So I love that you spoke to that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I think too that first I want to say I'm sorry you were in that situation, and I'm sure many people listening right now can identify with that numbness. If you're feeling numb right now and you're hearing this, I want you to not ignore it. The first thing we do when we feel numb is ignore it, right? And well done on bringing it to somebody. And I'm so glad that they showed up with compassion and care and help. But for those of you that are listening right now, I think the one way the devil attacks us is he wants to play. I mean, he's not creative, guys. He's the least creative. And he is the devil is the king of lies. And he's going to tell you no one will care.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do about it. And this is just something I was actually texting with a good friend earlier today and a client of mine, and they were talking about the numbness they're feeling and how they feel like they just have to power through in this moment and they'll just get to the other end. um, Powering through and getting to the other end when you've already become numb is a dangerous place to be. And so if you're
Yeah.
listening and that, asking for help is necessary. Asking
Yeah.
for help is necessary, and I'm so glad that you did that. What made you feel comfortable to do that?
Oh man, I would say I mean, I have a great boss here at Churchfront. Jake is a good friend, and we've been doing life together for a long time. But I would say outside of Churchfront is probably the best boss I've ever had. People,
That's amazing.
I think Carey Nieuwhof said people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. And I would agree with him mostly on that, except when I think back to stepping out of ministry, one of the biggest losses I would consider was my relationship with my boss, Lindsay Acasella, executive director at Storyline Church. And she's she's just one of the top shelf people that you meet in your life and you go, I am blessed by the Lord to have just sat under leadership of this person. Like it so I think
That's
the culture at that church was very familial. Like it was the one of the values is that the church was a family. So from the get-go, I mean, we have that kind of familiar, I say familial culture among the staff where we were pretty tight. I mean, it was a larger, maybe about 20 people on staff, and but we shared a lot and we were vulnerable with each other. And so I just kind of felt like, man, if I tell her this and she gets frustrated, or if I get fired or whatever, it's like, man, then obviously this is not a place I want to be. But I just kind of already knew I could go to her, and I sounds weird, but she felt very parental to me. So I felt like, man, I can go to her and I just know that she cares more about me as a person than the role I play on the team. And so she cares about my marriage and my family and my spiritual well-being, and she kind of knew my background and story from the interview process. So there was a lot of comfort there, and I'm really, I mean, that is a blessing that not everybody has, but I'm very very grateful for that experience.
I'm grateful for you too. And shout out, Lindsay, you obviously did a great job and made an impact on him. Um, for those of you that don't have a Lindsay in your life, like thinking through that and where you might feel empty and lost today, first I want you to hear me say, I'm sorry. That
Hmm.
is a hard situation to be in. It does feel very lonely. But what I would encourage you to do is if you don't have a safe space or you don't feel like you do right now, what I want you to do is there are ways for you to identify your values. Part of taking accountability is really owning the values that God gave you. There are different values. We can all love Jesus and still have different values. And so oftentimes the church might be having one set of values, and you might personally, Luke, have another set of values, and they might be in conflict. And there might need to be some conflict resolution that goes on. Or like you said, you were kind of got to the place where like, okay, if they respond this way and it's not positive, I know that I need to shift to a space where my values are honored. It doesn't mean, I think so many of us, we think, well, if they don't respond this way, it just means that I have to stay here and ignore all my values and completely be emptied and bitter the rest of my life.
Yeah.
No, that's not what God says. His word actually says he has immeasurably more for us. He doesn't want you to be held in that mental and physical captivity. He wants you to live out of the abundance. And so, what I would say is, in fact, if you're listening now and you're like, oh, how do I start even knowing what my values are? You can go to Sara Emmerson with two M's, EMMERSON.com. There's a free values quiz on the website there. Go ahead and take that. That'll show you one of your values. And I'd be happy to get on a call with you. You can sign up for that on there too and talk through it with you, a free call to say, hey, look, what do your values look like? And how do you use those in ministry? But that's going to be necessary and is part of you owning who you are. And when we talk about accountability, that's part of that for you.
That's so good, and I we'll put the link to that in the show notes because that um, it's hard to know what those that for creatives especially. I feel like the tension is I want to have values, but we're not really great at doing the whole like reverse engineering our emotions into or our kind of character into values. So it helps to have some kind of exercises to walk us through that process. So we'll link that down below. As you think about like transferring the accountability, I love that the last part was setting boundaries and kind of allowing clear expectations or managing expectations. Like if you're in that season um, where that's the next step, maybe you have your values, maybe you're starting to take accountability for your thoughts and really kind of grapple with that, then what are those next kind of key actions that somebody could take to establish relationship with their boss, or even with coworkers? Doesn't always have to be a direct report, but it could be with just general coworkers, and um, creating a better environment there for themselves.
Yeah. Um, get your pens out. When I learned this, it revolutionized the relationships I had with my work, with my relatives. I use it daily in my mind to self coach. These three things are going to sound so elementary, but will really be life giving for you. So, if you have never heard of the three levels of control, have you ever heard of them, Luke?
No, tell me more.
Okay, the three levels of control will help you tremendously. The first level is, shocker, full control. It's what we all want. If life was fully in my control, it would just, like, everyone does what I want, it would go so much better, right? But then I'd be living with robots, not
Yeah.
actually people. So recognizing that our preference in life is for full control, but there is, when I ask you about full control, Luke, what is actually in your full control?
Probably just me, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, just the only thing that I can control is like what I do, because can't not in full control of my kids. I'm not in full in control of my, I guess surroundings, like environment. I mean, some level there's variety there. So probably just my own actions
And your thoughts,
and my thoughts.
right?
Wow.
And your thoughts.
Come on.
So you are in full control of what you think, not of what comes into your mind, but what you allow to stay.
Hmm.
You're in full control of your actions and your thoughts. But how many of us are spending energy every single day as though we have full control over circumstances that we don't have control over?
Yeah.
We're spending we're spending a lot of energy on things that we don't have full control over, that are outside of our actions or outside of our thoughts. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is to rightfully and truthfully identify what is actually in your full control. Look at these new
Yeah.
emojis
I
that
know.
came up. This is
I think it's
hysterical.
happened on every podcast I've done in the past 2 months. It's
No, I'll
hilarious.
try to give you some other ones on the next one. So the second one is partial control. Let me see if I can get
Okay.
balloons on this one. Okay, let's see. Oh, confetti. We got confetti. So you go partial control. That's the second thing. What are the areas in life? So the first one is full control. The second one is partial control. What areas in life do I have partial control over? So Luke, I'm going to ask you, thanks for being the guinea pig here.
Yeah.
What are some areas of life that you have partial control over?
Probably, employment or work at some level. You can choose to kind of put yourself in certain circumstances to earn a living, and where you're expressing your skills, using your skills. Um, Partial control, like who you surround yourself with,
Mhm.
your community, neighbors, friends, home group, things like that. At some level, probably even family, like partial control over kind of your relationship with your family. So relationships is probably a big key there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've hit it on the head with people. Anytime there's people involved, there's partial control because they get a choice, right?
Hmm.
And even some of the projects, there's some projects that you're going to be on that you might have full control over, like once the project is given to you. But even that, sometimes you might have full control over executing it. But my guess is not every one of the projects was an idea that you created. Somebody
Right.
is giving it to you. And even if you work at an organization, you have a client. Usually the client is the pastor or the ministry leader or whoever's running that event or project that you're working on, right? So there's partial control there, and so that's the second group of things: is how do I identify what relationships in my life is within partial control, and how do I identify what my part is in that,
Mm.
and how do I release the part that isn't mine?
Wow.
So how can I identify what area of full control I have in the partial? When I say that, Luke, what comes up for you? What thoughts do you have?
It's like, man, I thought about when you said that, what part do I play in that? I thought of a pie chart. And it's like, if you think of your relationships or your circumstances, and you kind of look at like what's going on, and you try to assess, okay, what part of the pie am I? Am I a huge portion of this pie where I have a lot of partial control, or am I a smaller section? And then when you said release, it's like, oh yeah, that's an action that you've got to take mentally, emotionally, like spiritually sometimes, to release those expectations, release that. I mean, we've said control so much, but it just, yeah, that is the step that I don't think I had connected those dots of, you might understand the circumstance and your part in it, but actually taking steps to release the parts that you can't control is, I think that's probably the light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, because there's an active choice to let something go, to accept it. A lot of times
Mhm.
people think acceptance means you have to agree with it or like it. That's not what acceptance is. Acceptance is recognizing that it's happening and then taking the action to um, protect and take the right steps forward for yourself in the moment of it. So, okay, the project is happening whether you like it or not. It was just given to you. You're not fully in control of it. You have a part of it that you're in control of. Even that part might feel like, well, I don't get to have all of it, or it feels like too much. Well, guess what? You are in what you need to take accountability for: communicating your needs. If it's too
Mhm.
much, it's your responsibility to go tell them and to identify it. That's where, when you talk about the boundaries, this recognizing full control and partial control is how you help create your boundary. Not to keep other people out, but to help you and them know how to function with function when they are with you and together.
Yeah.
Um, Third level of control, if you don't mind me moving to that one,
Do it.
is no control. Now, I want you to know that our brain wants to tell us that we have no control over stuff most times because it takes the responsibility off.
Right.
If I don't have any control over that, then I'm going to just let them fail themselves. I have
Yeah.
no control over that. I'm going to just let them fail, or I'm going to stay bitter because they wouldn't let me have control over it, right? It
Mm.
releases us from the action that we need to take to move forward. It tells us, well, I don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah, what as you think about, I'm trying to think of ministry environments specifically, but what would be an area that you have no control over as a team player in a ministry environment?
Anyone else's actions, anyone else's thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't have any control over that. I have control over asking questions about it. I have control over staying curious. I have control over trying to come to a compromise. But if a team member comes to me and asks me something, I don't have control over what they ask. I don't have control over whether or not they give me a project. I don't have control over how they act if I ask them a question. So a lot, but here's the thing that's the real eye opener is I would I haven't done an actual study on this. I'm just going to go off of like a percentage in my gut, which could be wrong, but I would say 75 to 80% of the things we think about when we're not choosing our thoughts is in the realm of things we have no control about.
Man. Whew.
I would love for each of you on this call to maybe even do a thought audit today. A thought audit of, okay, where are my thoughts going today? Are they in things, are my thoughts leading to things that I'm fully in control of, partially in control of? I'm just noticing that I have pen on my finger here. Sorry. Um, Fully in control of, see, those thoughts are coming to your mind.
Uh-huh.
Partially in control of, or no control. And the thing is, the devil wants to steal and rob and destroy because he knows if he can keep your mind on things that you have no control over, he can keep you from taking action and actually move forward.
Mm.
Imagine if you took those thoughts that you are spending on the things that you have no control over. Why do they do it this way? What if we would have done it that way? Should they have done this? If you can start to learn the ways to release those and make a conscious choice to release it, and if you don't know how to do that, contact me. I'll teach you.
Yeah.
Make a conscious choice to release it and then put that energy into the things that you have full control over or partial control over. Imagine how much more productive you would be. Imagine how much more happy you would be. Sometimes we feel excluded, like when we didn't get to be a part of something or we're not in control of it. When you actually learn how to do this in a proper way, I'm telling you, you're going to have freedom to be like, great, I have no control over that. Amen. Thank God. I have some autonomy and some freedom back. It's not within my control. I'm going to go and pay attention over here and put my energy. You weren't invited to the meeting? Good. They didn't ask your opinion on something? Amen. Put your energy into what you do have full control over and do the very best with what God has given you and ask Him for more instead of spending the time and energy on things that you do not have any control over.
Yeah, it
When
comes
you
down
can,
to it will come down to stewardship too, right? Of what is God giving you and what is he not giving you. And so if we
yeah,
focus on the things that we can't control and we have no control over, we could be missing what God is actually asking us to focus our time on and focus our energy on.
yep,
Mm.
absolutely.
I have many light bulbs in my head going on right now. So I'm very thankful for this conversation, Sarah. I appreciate you giving me some of the guinea pig treatment because it's been helpful for my own even insight. I think it will be helpful for our audience too.
I'm so
Mm.
glad. I mean, I know this work has been helpful for me. I have an individual coach and many mentors and coaches. And I don't know if you know this, Luke, but and the other thing I would say for other people listening here today, if your community and most of the people that you talk to are within your church and within the ministry that you're working in, you need to broaden your community. You need to broaden the think tank. You need to get some hobbies outside of what you're doing. Because if you don't work on your individual creativity, you will become bitter at your ministry.
Yeah.
I see it time and time again. If you don't have some project that you're working on outside of that, you don't have a group of people that you talk to outside of that, you don't have a coach or a mentor outside of that, um, you're you're going to get burnt out and frustrated. And so I would say you need to broaden that community. That would be something that I would add to that accountability piece. And I say that because I've been there. I've been there. I worked in so many different ministries and learned over the years that God has given other people's insight and other people's direction to me as gifts right when I needed it most. But if I wouldn't have taken the effort to make that a priority or to seek out the help that I needed, I would have been very alone in the moments that I needed those voices most.
Yeah. And you need the if you don't have that community, it is really hard to get an outside perspective or to get I think to even assess the control questions we just went through. Like if you don't have a space for that, it's hard to even assess those three levels of control within your context of employment or leadership or community within the church or within your role. It's really helpful if you have some friends that are, maybe not members of your church and some community that through your kid's school or through your, network of people. Like it just, those can be really good environments to start processing these things because it's just a fresh environment that's not, inundated with what you're going through day to day, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm on the right track there, but
No, it's exactly right. And the other thing is sometimes you just need people to have conversations with that have nothing to do with the Easter program. You're
hmm
like, I just want to talk to somebody that it has nothing to do with evaluating Sunday. I just
yep,
want to talk to somebody that isn't asking me for the next input list or isn't asking me when the recording's going to be uploaded or when.
yeah,
You need to have conversations about the things that interest you outside of that because you are a human being, not a human doing.
yeah,
And we forget that so often. The other thing I would say, and because I've given my life to this and believe so wholeheartedly, because I get to see God use this each and every day, not just in other people's lives, but in my life, is if you don't have a mentor or a one-on-one coach, you need one.
yeah,
Like your
100%.
likelihood your likelihood of progressing in your profession or your personal life is about 20% when you listen to a podcast, or you, like, even listening today, you're going to take some next steps, which is great. You're about 20% likely to stay consistent out of it. But when you add a one-on-one coach, that likelihood of success rises to between 86 and 95%. Because you're adding in individual strategy, you're adding in processing. There goes the little emojis there again.
Strategy, thumbs up.
Yep, strategy, thumbs up. And the biggest thing is you're adding in accountability. And for so many of us, and I know production and tech people really, really well, you guys don't like accountability. And I say you guys, being myself one of them, accountability feels like a curse word, right?
Yep.
But when you do it with somebody that has your best interest in heart and knows who you are and is trying to hold you accountable to the values that you have created, your happiness, your satisfaction, and your success skyrockets. And so I just want to tell you, there are tons of great coaches out there. There are coaching companies, there are mentors. My encouragement for you is to go out and find one. Go out and find one. And if you don't have one and you don't know where to start, you're more than welcome to come onto my website, message me. I'd be happy to have a free call with you and to talk to you and to guide you towards the best fit. If it's me, awesome. If it's not, I know a lot of people. If you're like, she's not my cup of tea, fine. I will point you to the best person that is, because my care for each of you is that you would maximize the gift that God's given you so that you can enjoy life. You're not meant to just do it begrudgingly.
Yeah. So good. I'm going to honor your time and make sure that we get you out on time for your next call. But I want you to tell people where to connect with you, socials, website. Where's the best place for them to find Sara?
Yeah, go on all the socials, Sara Emmerson or Sara Emmerson Coaching, 2 M's, EMMERSON. And you can find me on all the socials there. And then my website is Sara Emmerson, SARAEMMERSON.com. That's it.
Easy. You've got maybe one of the easiest places to find you. Like, your name actually is spelled like how it sounds. So you guys will find Sara.
And you can thank my husband's family for that. I have no idea why.
That's right. Sara, you have brought so much value to our audience and to this conversation, to my own life. And so again, thank you so much for making time for us and for our audience. I would love to have you back in the future, because I have many unanswered questions for you that I would piggyback off of today. But thank you again for being on.
Yeah, call me anytime. I would love to have another conversation. And for those of you listening there today, my hope is that you leave today knowing somebody cares and that there is help for whatever you're going through. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sara.